Installing a spring into the Rokinon or Samyang 24mm lens to improve its focusing. So first off, just going to undo the screws on the lens mount. There's 3 of them, and this is pretty straightforward. Just undo those 3. And the lens mount just lifts off. So here we have a ring controlling the aperture of the lens. This is attached indirectly to the aperture control ring on the outside. It can pop out of place during this process, but it's not too hard to figure out how to get back into place, so don't panic if that happens. I'm sure you'll be able to figure it out if that does happen. Now first of all, to be able to get our spring in place, it needs a bit of extra room. So we're going to have to remove this dark inner ring from the lens mount, and that just pushes out. Mine might come out a little bit easier because I've already taken it out once, but it's not too difficult to get out. So that little ring comes out there, and we just discard this now. We don't use that again. So here's the spring. The spring is going to fit inside the lens mount there, just like that. And these 2 little arms of the spring are going to be pushing down onto the moving part of the focus mechanism of the lens. As I move the focus mechanism of the lens, you can see it projecting out from the lens there. That's how the lens focuses. It moves this inner assembly of lens elements. So in order to solve the problem the lens has with focusing, this spring is going to push down onto the this inner assembly of lens elements to hold it against the guide track, and therefore make the focusing more predictable and much more usable. So to mount this spring in here, which we've already made earlier, you can either place it on the lens assembly there, or you can place it in the actual lens mount and place it on. So this is a bit tricky. You want to make sure you don't scratch the lens elements at this point, but it is possible. Just place that there and roughly line up the holes for the screws. Place that down there, and it should all be just pressing gently down on that inner moving part of the lens elements. Now I'll just test that just to make sure that's all working. And as I move the focus, you can see the inner elements moving in and out, and the spring arms are just pushing down on those inner elements there. Not on the glass themselves obviously, but just on the metal casing around the glass. And you can see how the the spring arms are shaped to curve just around that metal housing of the lens elements, so they can fit up between the lens elements and the camera mount there, or the lens mount there. And that's why we needed to remove this thing. Okay, so that all seems to be working, so we can put the screws back in. They can be a bit fiddly. Oh, looks like I haven't lined them up properly. Nope, let me just pull that out of there. So you can just rotate that around until it gets back into place. And actually, before you put the screws in, it's often a good idea at this point just to check to make sure the aperture is still working properly, and in my case it is. Sometimes if the spring is it's too strong, when it's pushing down on the lens assembly there, it can deform so much that it starts pushing onto the aperture control, and that stops you from being able to control the aperture. So it's a bit of a balancing act, trying to get the spring strong enough to push the lens assembly, but not so strong that it deforms so much that it pushes on the aperture control. Okay, so that's all tightened up now, and we have a lens which is now hopefully going to focus a lot better. You can see the arms of the spring pushing down on the lens assembly there, on the element assembly. And that makes it really much more usable.